the next Sunday. And I went right back down to the practice field and old Spinney Field and wanted to know what's going on. And so I'm meeting with him, and Lindy Infante was our offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. And, you know, the decision, we talked a lot about a lot of different things. And Forrest said, be down here at 7 o'clock Wednesday morning, which was our first day of practice. And we came in and we talked, is it better if I came off the bench if they needed me? And, you know, the end result was he says, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to start. He said, okay, you're starting. So that's how it all worked out.
All right. And you guys ended up winning a great game, 34-33, I think it was. You played great. You want to talk a little bit about that game? And was that really where you guys realized that you might have something special?
Well, you know, once I said that I wanted to start, and we started, the week went on, and I said, well, what am I doing here? That, you know, their defensive line was called the New York Sack Exchange. You know, I think it was Mark Gastineau and Marty Lyons, Abdul Salam, Joe Klecko, a great front four. And I started to think in the back of my mind, maybe I should have sat this one out. And we get to New York, and the offensive line always would take a hotel van early to the stadium. And so, you know, we get to the stadium on the team bus, and it was right next to the tennis facility, and the U.S. Open tennis tournament was going on at the same time, so traffic was a mess. Well, we get to the locker room, and there's no offensive line. We go out to warm up, and there's no offensive line. The hotel driver mistakenly took him to Yankee Stadium instead of Shea Stadium. So we're literally out in the field warming up when the offensive line showed up for the game, and I was very nervous that there was no offensive lineman there. So we started the game, and you know, and I had thrown 3 interceptions early the previous game, and so I think that Lindy Infante is going to kind of let me kind of get in the flow of the game, hand off a couple of times. Well, the first play that's called is a pass, and so I told the offensive line, I said, all right, I said, we're going to throw on the first down. The ball's going to go to the right just in case something happens. Go over and cover. Well, the pass was complete, and like you said, we went on and won the game, and that was kind of a springboard for us.
All right, you want to talk a little bit about the atmosphere around the city? Because the city had been starved to have a winner. I mean, baseball-wise, the Reds were always good back then. But this was really the first time I think the city got completely behind the team.
Well, you know, that was the first year we had the stripes on the jerseys and on the helmets. And, you know, we were a real good football team. And, you know, all of a sudden, Who Day became popular and banners and you know, became, you know, all over Riverfront Stadium, and we went on and won. And you know, that year they say if you're gonna go to the playoffs, you got to win in November. Well, we had 5 games against playoff teams in November, and not one of them was close. We blew them all out, and I think that's when the momentum really took off around the city.
Yeah, and the one that stands out to me was the 41-17 win over San Diego out in San Diego. Which brings me to the next question, because I had Ed White. You know Ed, he was the guard for the Chargers.
Oh, yeah, I know.
And I had him on the show, and he starts whining and complaining about a door being open and the wind blowing in their face. And he starts to try to tell me that they'd have won the game if the weather would have been nicer. But he'd forgotten how bad you guys beat them like 2 months before that. You beat them in nice weather worse than you beat them in the bad weather. But
you know, and that's what I always said. If they'd have beat us in San Diego, they would have hosted the AFC Championship game. So we deserved to play at Cincinnati.
Yeah, I mean, that was the Bengals were a really good team that year on offense and defense. You had Pete Johnson, guys like Anthony Munoz. But you get to the Freezer Bowl after you beat Buffalo, 59 below. I think you, Terry Bradshaw, Tom Brady, the 3 best bad weather quarterbacks I've ever seen. Do you want to talk a little bit about that game and then what you think maybe gave you an advantage in bad weather over other guys?
Well, you know, I don't know. I think I had big hands, which helped, you know, me control the football. You know, obviously it was brutally cold, but what made the big difference was the wind. You know, I think it was, you know, the actual temperature was around 10 below, but the wind made it, the wind chill was 59 below. So the wind was substantial. And, you know, one of the things that Forrest Gregg really did for us is he made us not only physically tough, but mentally tough. And then I think, you know, to go out and you know, we only had 1 turnover, and that was in the fourth quarter, you know, late when the game was really, you know, decided. But we went out and, you know, we adjusted to it. You know, Forrest Gregg, his pregame talk was, well, it's a lot like going to the dentist. You know it's going to hurt, but you got to go anyway. And he said the first thing that I'm going to do is look on their sideline to see who doesn't want to play. But he said before I do that, I'm looking on our sideline to see what of our guys don't want to play. And we went out there and played an exceptional football game for the conditions.
All right, then you finally, after a decade, you get to Super Bowl XVI. You want to tell us your thoughts about that game and what's your maybe fondest memory?
Well, it should be the biggest game of your career, which I guess it is, but it's also the biggest disappointment of your career when you don't win it.
Yeah.
You go there and you try to say, well, it's just another game, and you try to convince yourself of that, but all of a sudden, I remember on the sidelines for the national anthem, Diana Ross is singing the national anthem, and she never showed up at Cincinnati, so this must have been a big game. And they always talk about the team that scores first, has a real advantage, and we kicked off to them, and they fumbled the opening kickoff, and we had good field position and make a couple of first downs, and we got 3rd and goal inside the 5, a sure field goal, and then I threw the interception, and they went down and scored first, and then I think we had 2 more. Well, later on, I think it was in the second quarter, Chris Collinsworth fumbled down in scoring range, and then we had the 2 fumbles on kickoff returns right before half. They gave them 6 points, and you have 4 turnovers, and you're down 20-0 at halftime, and it's hard to overcome that.
Yeah, I think the Bengals ended up turning the ball over 5 times to their 1 and lost the game by 5 points.
Yeah, it's the first time I think that the losing team had more touchdowns, more total yards, more yards passing, more first downs than the team that won.
Yeah, I think you threw for over 300 yards, and you were only like the 3rd or 4th quarterback to do that in Super Bowl history at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So, but like I say, you can't have 5 turnovers in any game, especially a Super Bowl game, and expect to win.
No, and especially, I still think the Bengals were better than the Niners that year, but I'm sure you do too.
Yeah, but
it still bothers me. They need to win a Super Bowl at some point so I can let that stuff go.
That's exactly right, and then hopefully, I think the Bengals are trending so much in the right direction, and I feel really bad for Andy Dalton last year, getting hurt and not finishing the season, because I think he had really, he had taken the next step as a quarterback where he could really carry the offense, and I think the Bengals would have made a deep run in the playoffs if he'd been healthy. Yeah,
I think you look at the Denver game. I think they win that if he's playing. I think they're probably 13-3 or 14-2 if he's still playing, and they don't even have to play in the first round.
Right. So that was a shame because Andy's done such remarkable things in his first 5 years here.
Let's talk a little bit about Sam Weish. Forrest Gregg leaves, you get Sam Weish. What was your relationship like with Sam?
Well, it was kind of interesting because when the Bengals drafted me, they traded Sam. He was one of the quarterbacks on the team, and that I think he went from there to the Redskins, and then the Redskins to Buffalo, and Buffalo maybe the St. Louis, for a cup of coffee. I don't know, but when he got the job, I think it was on New Year's Day, and he called me. He says, "Well, Anderson," he said, "you got me traded 13 years ago. I'm going to get even now." So Sam was an innovative head coach, was fun to be around, an excellent football mind, and we're still good friends today.
All right, and then I think it was 84, they drafted Boomer Esiason. What was it like working with Boomer?
Well, Boomer, he came in, and then Boomer was kind of a cocky young guy, and was a little bit brash, and I wouldn't say we were had a close relationship. We had a competitive relationship, and we worked well in the room, and and it's amazing that as time went on, we became closer and closer as friends, and are very good friends today. But Boomer wanted to come in and make his mark, and he was a good player, and I was at the end, and his time came, and he did a great job.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, the last thing I remember about you, the 1984 Bengals, I think started off like 1-6, something like that, ended up 8-8. They were as hot as it could possibly be. You were playing great, blew out Buffalo. The Raiders kind of screwed it up for us by starting Mark Wilson over Jim Plunkett in that final game. But that Bengals team, I think, would have had a chance to make a deep run that year the way you guys were playing.
Yeah, we were good, and I remember how that season started off. We're going and we're playing our last preseason game in Indianapolis against the Colts. And so we were going up the day of the game, and we got on buses in Cincinnati. We went up and we stopped for a pregame meal along the way and got to the locker room. And, Sam just kind of noticed the team was a little bit sluggish. So he comes over to me and says, all right, we're going to start the game in our 2-minute offense. Nothing was planned, just our normal 2-minute offense. And we went down the field and scored the first 3 times we had it. I think that's where the light bulb came off, really started to come on for Sam about the no-huddle offense, which – he developed after that, and Boomer was the master of.
I thought Marv Levy invented that in 1990, Ken.
Well, no. But as far as what
I know, I'm just making a joke because it still annoys me that Marv Levy acts like he invented it when he tried to stop the Bengals from using it in '88 in a championship game against him.
That's exactly right.
So you retired. You went into TV for a while, I think, in Cincinnati. What kind of transition was that? A hard transition for you to make?
Well, nothing I think fills the void of what you do when you're a professional athlete. And, it's the locker room and the camaraderie I missed as much as anything. And, I always, when I was in college, I wanted to be a high school teacher and coach. And so coaching is something I really always wanted to do. And, when you retire and you kind of think about it, do you know the hours that coaches work? That's really stupid, if you want to go into coaching. And I didn't want to be stupid, so, I started doing some radio and television work. And then you realize that, I'm not really great at this. And I couldn't get the coaching bug out of my head. And so, I did the radio and TV thing for 6 years, and then made up my mind I was going to try to get into coaching. And luckily, for me, at that point in time, Dave Shula was the head coach, and he had a quarterback opening, and he hired me and gave me my first shot at coaching the NFL.
So did that give you what you were looking for? I mean, I know you did it for, over a decade, almost 20 years?
Yeah, 17 years coached. So I loved coaching. I loved the aspect of game planning and figuring it out, and I loved, working with the quarterbacks on the field, trying to, to get them better. And it was all the Bill Walsh footwork drills that I did. And, I love that part of it.
Now, I find a lot of times you'll hear them say that guys that were great players have a hard time being really good coaches because things came easily to them and they don't understand why the other guys don't pick it up as easy. Was that ever kind of a problem for you?
No, not really, because I don't think things necessarily came easy for me. When I was, at Augustana, I was kind of a little rollout option type quarterback. I knew nothing about dropping back, and just how Bill Walsh took me and walked me through things, and then jogged, and then before anything was full speed, and just to lay a foundation like that of fundamentals for a quarterback, I really enjoyed imparting that part of it to the quarterbacks.
All right, and before we get off your career completely and go into your foundation a little bit, you want to talk a little bit about Anthony Munoz and Reggie Williams. Those are guys that stood out as, outside of you, the heart of those Bengals teams.
Well, Anthony, the best ever at left tackle, in the history of the National Football League. And it's amazing how when we drafted him, all of a sudden my career got better again. People think, well, geez, he's really fallen off. But all of a sudden, when the offensive line was solidified, I got good again. And Reggie was, just a smart defensive player that, had a lot of enthusiasm, was kind of the heart and soul of our defense in those years.
All right, so we get now, you want to tell everybody a little bit about what you're doing today and talk a little bit about the Ken Anderson Foundation?
Yeah, my wife and I have a nephew that's severely autistic, and I've witnessed him, have behavioral issues and attack his father and his mother, and realized he couldn't live at home anymore, and he was in a facility down in Pedro, Ohio. And then when he reached adulthood, which is 22, the rules kind of changed, and he, went into a group home in Cincinnati, and so that's where we kind of got the idea that, we saw him in a different situation down in Pedro, Ohio. It was 10 cabins, 10 boys in each cabin, and how he did well, and he had friends down there and had walking trails without shooting baskets, and now he spends a lot of time, inside in his room. And so we decided that, we had some other